Welcome to Shelf Help. Today we're speaking with Cassie Maschhoff, co-founder and CEO of Lottie's Meats, sister-owned sausage brand that's making a lot of waves these days. Cassie and her sister Chelsea, they grew up on I think it was a 6th-generation family pork farm in Southern Illinois. After a decade or so in the tech world, mostly at Google, Cassie teamed up with Chelsea, who's a classically trained chef from the Culinary Institute of America. And they kind of wanted to go back to their roots. So yeah, really excited to get into it. Cassie, just maybe first off, just for the listeners that aren't that familiar with Lottie's, love to just get a quick lay of the land just in terms of, origin story, why behind the brand, kind of the core products in the lineup, and then maybe just a few places that people can get their hands on them. And then we'll go from there.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. As you said, Chelsea and I grew up on a family pork farm. We're actually 6th-generation, but when we were growing up, our parents encouraged us to try our hands at other things outside of hog farming. Chelsea went into culinary. I fell into tech, but the farther away we got, we were always like, no one else is force-fed pork their whole life, or why are we not seeing premium pork on menus? And where is it in the grocery store? Chelsea actually started in her restaurant using pork from the family farm and network of family farms we grew up on. And she was experimenting making sausage using only the best cuts of pork. So only pork loin and pork shoulder, which is like really nice, beautiful cut, and like nice spices, like real Calabrian chilies and grade A maple syrup. And the bites were just insatiable. She was doing a few pop-ups and it was getting a lot of success. And so I bullied my way in. We talked about doing something. And you know what? We're like, if anyone is going to reintroduce pork sausage or just pork in this way that people can really trust and have a clean label that I'm sure, Adam, is kind of having a renaissance right now. There's like this return to all natural. We were like, maybe, it should be us. It's kind of a now or never. So Lottie's was created both to honor like that family legacy, but just reintroduce pork in like a chef-crafted fun way. So we have 4 products. 2 of them are fully cooked sausage links. 2 of them are expertly seasoned ground pork blends. And you can find us now in about 300 accounts, mainly in Colorado. Then we have some pockets in the Midwest and NorCal and SoCal on the West Coast.
Awesome. Nice. That's a great overview. Well, yeah, maybe just the first off, there's, it seemed like funny, seems to be a fair amount of polarizing views on really both sides about building a business with families. So yeah, from someone that's actually done the thing, doing the thing, built a successful business with your sister, what's that experience been like?
Yeah. It's funny thinking back to it because when we were growing up, we had a lot of fake businesses. I'm sure as a lot of siblings do, where like, you try to move into each other's rooms only to move out. Like 2 days ago, we had lemonade stands. We even had on the farm a bakery where Chelsea was the chef. I was like drawing our menus and things at like 8 years old. And I think as real adult people talking about it, Chelsea and I were just talking about this the other day because I was like, wow, it's so tough to do business even with a sibling. I can't imagine doing it with like a marital, like a spouse. And she was like, Cassie, mom and dad did that. And I was like, oh yeah, you're right. I was like, why would anyone ever do this? Because it is the best and the worst. There are pros and cons.
Yeah.
Obviously, every relationship is different. And we are actually one of 4. So we have 2 other siblings that even that dynamic would be different. I think it is mostly the best, and we have gotten to the point where it's the best. It was challenging in the beginning because, as you mentioned at the top of this call, we are coming from such different industries, tech and culinary, where Chelsea is like in such a different everyday environment. She's not used to like I am like moving online digitally, but I think we both move with like the right amount of velocity and we complement each other in a way that I think this is really important, that like forms a whole. I think a lot of times people are like, oh, you're so opposite. We're not necessarily opposite in that we're so different, but I think like our complementary strengths obviously are there where it matters. And over time, we really had to just like find out what those things are. And I think then it comes down to just like respect and communication style. Early on, we had someone give us really good advice about how do you not keep score? Like there is no scorekeeping. And we really always try to practice and remember that. It's more about like, how can we acknowledge this is what you're doing without, ever keeping score? So that's been really helpful.
Yeah.
I'll also say it's just like, I don't know, do you have siblings?
Older brother, yeah, 4 years older.
Would you ever start a business with him?
It's a funny you say that talking about the opposite. I've never really thought about it, but we are very opposite. He's a PhD econ professor, and that is about the opposite. I think from a complementary skill set, I think that could work.
Yeah, yeah. It's fun though because you have these different strengths and different styles, but at the end of the day, you're such good friends, and so like, who do you want to do business with when like the lows are low because it's really going to
Yeah,
be low, but then the highs are so fun, together because you're doing it with somebody that like you've just been through it all with and like get to understand and respect. I would say the other thing with siblings or just a close friend or a partner, if you see so much of this in CPG, is you just can't take things personally. And yeah, even this week, now that we're almost 2 years into this little baby business, we're still finding ourselves being like, okay, sorry, I just need to say this direct. Like this is just what it is. But that's like a weird communication style because on the opposite side, it's really nice that you can be direct because you can just get things done faster
sure.
than, like a more corporate setting where it's like,
Yeah.
"Hi, how are you? How might this find you? Blah, blah, blah." So you can't take it personally. It took a long time to get here. You have to put in the work. And I think then it is like the best thing ever.
Rewinding back to kind of some of those early days of R&D formulation, granted, I think this is probably more Chelsea's like realm, but so we can touch on it at a high level. But from what I know and read, and you mentioned you like focus on really kind of this perfect blend of premium cuts of pork loin and pork shoulder. I think kind of a network of farms that I'm sure you guys vet pretty rigorously. I imagine it just took a while to dial things in, just some exactly the right blend between the pork loin and the shoulder, exactly the kind of right spices before you felt like you had the versions that actually were made the cut. And you're like, yeah, we love these. We feel like we want to bring these to market without getting like too much detail or whatnot. I'm just kind of curious, anything that comes top of mind or like key variables that you guys are playing around with between that first version, the one you knew you felt like this was right, and
Hmm.
how many batches it took to get there, how long it took.
Yeah. From concept, Chelsea had been experimenting with these recipes for like 3 years and doing it on the side. Like I had no idea that she was even doing that. So whenever I had first tasted it, I think maybe in 2023, maybe the summer of 2023, like a whole year before we started and decided to do something crazy and do this together, she had already been working on the recipes for a while. Fast forward to, I think January 2024 was when I quit my job and we were just starting to look for co-packers. That was like a whole other iteration. And I will say still is. So almost 2 years in, we launched in March of 2024. Like that's when we picked up our product from the co-packer. We are still like iterating. Such a art and a science, especially with the meat product when you're not using preservatives and you're not using like sodium vinegar, chlorophyte, like everything else you see on the back of the meat label. It's a lot of like iteration, I think. So we're still going through that.
Yeah, I think that's what I hear from most CPG founders I talk to is,
Okay. That
the
makes me feel
product.
better.
Yeah. It's like the product is never done, so you're
Yeah.
always going to continue to iterate on it forever.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess so.
I think I've also heard, I think maybe in another podcast or interview you had where you kind of talked about how you felt like you're kind of in this like awkward, messy middle to a certain extent where like too big for the small guys, too small for the big guys. This means that sounds like you guys are currently, at least last time I checked, working with a variety of co-packers to meet the demand.
Hmm.
And it sounds like it took quite a while to find the right partners you felt like were a good fit. Maybe just at a high level, love to kind of get a bit of a sense of what that journey was like and what you were specifically looking for and key criteria that were on your checklist.
Yeah. Yeah. It has been a journey. We have to work with USDA inspected facilities. So that really, really narrows the list for better or for worse. I know a lot of other brands. I just spoke with an emerging brand yesterday that was asking how they go about finding a co-packer and like what are the key criteria? What is the negotiation process? For us, it's like a very traditional industry where we were like looking at PDFs on like a USDA Gov website, but we wanted to start at least somewhere local. So that was Denver at the time because that's where Chelsea was. And we wanted to be in the facility and we wanted to make sure that we could honor some of these chef crafted techniques that I just mentioned. Chelsea had been like practicing on a small scale on herself. And so it needed to be someone local where we could be there and that they could hopefully meet our quality bar. So many co-mans, no matter industry agnostic, are going for scale, and quantity over quality. So that was really tough. The other thing I think that was really tough for us in sausage making is like most sausage is made the same way. Hence, you don't want to know how the sausage is made. It's like trimmings, knuckle, cartilage. Sorry to gross anybody out. And just, like mass produced whatever's left over, maybe older cuts. And we didn't want to use like artificial maple powder, for example. So that was an argument we had. I think we've worked with maybe like 11 different co-packers. Often was like being told you have to use artificial maple powder when we're like, we want to use grade A maple syrup, but maybe a co-man doesn't want to like use wet ingredients in their lines. Like there was so much ingredient, I think, friction, but then that helped with the criteria of like, okay, they have to be committed to these ingredient quality standards, these techniques, and local. But again, we didn't really have a big list. So then I also was telling this brand this yesterday, it does come down to some convincing and razzle dazzle, because when you are in the messy middle, nobody wants to work with you. There's no incentive, but
Yeah.
they have to really love the product and see the potential. And you have to sell that, as you know, you always do when you're a founder. So I
Yep.
think that's really important to remember. It's the business models just don't necessarily align, and you have to try to give something and get them on board.
You guys have such a high bar from a quality standpoint, and assuming I understand correctly that you, because of the state they're in, you're working with more than one co-packer. How do you, I guess, help ensure that they're really maintaining quality, like quality and consistency across those co-packers, regardless of where the sausage is coming from, regardless of the facility it's coming from? When they hit the shelf, it's always going to be that consistent experience for consumers.
Yeah, it's really difficult. And I think one thing we're learning even recently in the last few months, because I feel like it wasn't until end of maybe the back half of 2025 that we really started growing in real retail. I say real in that like multi-door, 20-door chains, that even on shelf with merchandising and counting on each associate to like date stamp effectively and thaw effectively is like a whole other game. But even out the gate, we really try to build those relationships with each co-mans, try to be on site as much as possible. Chelsea has some travel this month going to them, doing QA checklist, trying to even put like instructions in the box and just iterating. But it's difficult. We'll always have to work with multiple, because we have to work with one for cooked products and one for raw. So there's like some nuances there. But yeah, we try to control what we can control and remind ourselves of that. It's tricky. I don't know. What do you hear from other brands that they
That's a
do?
good
Because
question.
I'm
Yeah,
also
yeah.
like,
I feel like, well, I guess everything is hard. I feel like, when it's more, I guess, more manufactured-ish type products, like it's a snap product or something, yeah, that's a bit more manufactured. I feel like there's a bit more of like a formulaic recipe, where I feel like it's probably somewhat easier to make consistency versus a product where you're
yeah,
actually using, I know, it feels like making sausages, there's just a lot more variability that can happen. And so I
yeah,
feel like it's
there
probably harder
is.
for you guys than most.
It is. And there have been times, like the first and only time, knock on wood, I've cried worse from some batches we got back after like working for 9 months to get our first big retail order, and the product was like not there. This is when complimentary comes back. And this is why it would be good if you and your PhD brother start a business together, because Chelsea is always, I always say, and it's so true, in such a compliment to her. She's like the angel on my shoulder, and I'm like the devil, because
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, it's fine. We can still sell it. And she's like, this isn't it. And I'm like, what? But it would be like really oversalted, or like the oven, is baking like 10,000 pounds. And maybe there was like a few pieces that didn't get fully cooked on our 2 fully cooked products. And there's just so much, like dozens and dozens of things that could happen. And that really sucks, because you lose like the cost of raw materials. And I don't know if you hear this with a lot of brands you talk to in our industry. A lot of co-manufacturers don't want to sign contracts. It's kind like it's legacy. It's kind of like Handshake. We're small enough. It's in and out. And so sometimes I'm like, we're doing everything we can and almost like micromanaging to like check all these things here. Like we cannot afford to mess up this batch. But sometimes they're like, yeah, we got this. We know how to do our jobs. So I don't
Yeah.
know how brands handle that. I'm like, don't have the personality type to be chill about it.
Assuming the goal is to eventually move to one larger co-packer partner that you can work with and hopefully eliminate some of those potential consistency challenges or whatnot. Assuming that is the goal, like at what stage of the business or volume or whatnot, do you feel like you're going to be able to make that transition if that is the goal?
Yeah, I think we're getting there with one of our partners, I would say, and we're about to do like our largest production run ever, which is great. And so that's hard because it's hard to manage multiple partners and it's hard to gain efficiencies. But for our product, we're not a beverage brand where we can just like produce so much and let it sit in a warehouse for a year. Like we want it to be fresh and we want to like consistently been iterating. So I would say it is a goal to an extent, but we'll probably always have two because most of them that we found, don't like to do cooked and raw. It's like so separate. Maybe I guess food safety reasons. I don't know. That's another Chelsea thing that I'm just like out of my brain, out of sight. I can't put anything else in there.
And just to clarify, cased sausages, those are the one that are cooked,
They're
and then you got
cooked.
also some ground
Yes.
sausages, and those are raw.
Yeah. So that's like, so for the raw production, we are sourcing from our network of family farms, like the one we grew up on. We only work with a handful that meet certain criteria. And we will then, it will go to a processor. We will buy 100% pork shoulder for the ground raw product. Then that is sent to a co-man with our proprietary like spices, recipes. Then they will take finely ground, add that in, but it's all raw based. So like they won't, they kind of keep it like that versus the links will get cuts, but then they have like smokers and ways to sous vide. And there's all this other
Right.
intricate equipment. So different capabilities and processes.
From a brand identity and packaging design
Mm,
standpoint, you guys definitely have a pretty distinct look compared to other brands in the market, which I think is great. You really stand out. I think I've seen you describe it as like an old school diner and gas station vibes with a bit more of a modern spin, if I got that right. Um,
love that.
but yeah,
Gas station vibes.
what were like some of the key things that were top of mind for you guys when you were kind of building up the brand identity, positioning, and voice?
Yeah, I love this question because it's fun to think back on it because this was one of the first things we did when I was still working in my corporate job, not having any intention to leave it and start a sausage brand. I'm not crazy, but I guess I am. Chelsea was thinking about, she really wanted to take a break from executive chef life, also talk about a grind, no pun intended. Chefs are like incredible humans that you just have to have the stamina for, I don't even know. And so she, as she were making these sausages, it was going to maybe be a pop-up concept or we didn't know. So I was just helping her on the side, like build out the brand because I was working in tech and marketing. And so we didn't work with any formal CPG designers. We were kind of just really trying to do what we knew about brand identity and positioning, but also just like what was so true to us, or like even Chelsea not being in corporate, having no idea how some of these things work and go. And so the brand is really rooted in the name Lottie, which is a family name. We wanted it to be nostalgic, but like not too overly heritage or masculine, like I think a lot of meat brands are. Like it should be familiar and accessible, so kind of have that vintagey feel, but it is more, I think, modern and a little bit feminine. We also like, I don't know if you can tell by the way I'm just rambling in this interview, we don't take ourselves too seriously. So, and we want the experience with Lottie's to be really playful. Like a lot of sausage, in my opinion, or before we started Lottie's, or I even had it, like I think I thought of sausage as like a chicken sausage or something that's like very functional. But Lottie's is so fun because it's become like such a community experience. Like people are cooking it for an event, or you're making like a gorgeous pasta that was so easy with like our Calabrian sausage, or it's an elevated, breakfast burrito that like is so memorable and not just like food for function, like a lot of sausage is. And so much of that I think is transparent, or is translated, I should say, into the brand, that it's like kind of simple but accessible and familiar and just like a fun spin on classics, which is like what our products are too. They're just like elevate spin on a lot of like old school classics.
I love that. If I came to you next week and said, "Hey, I was inspired by you. I'm going to launch some sort of premium meat brand," what are 2 or 3 things that would come top of mind, like tips you'd give me in terms of how to go about kind of building a brand that
Oh my
resonates?
gosh. I would say don't start a meat brand. It's really hard. Choose any other category. I don't know. I feel like we're not that good at brand and probably could be, but it's just like everything in CPG. I don't know if you feel like this. There's just so much noise and you're just always comparing yourself to everybody and you see what everyone is doing. You're like, wow. should I be doing all of these things and working with this agency? And am I talking about the right things? And is this message getting translated? It's just like so ecosystem overload that I'm always like, shoot, we're doing a bad job. But then sometimes I'm like, you know what? You just kind of have to like inch by inch and try to focus on like the attributes that matter and focus. So for us, like it's hard to market and brand meat. Like be honest, raw meat, it like looks like cat food, you know? So maybe we should just I would recommend having a brand that says not cat food. Put that on your on your packaging. But you know, it's one thing to stand out on shelf. And I think over time we've slightly iterated and tried to optimize after like hearing from customers standing in hundreds of grocery stores of what is really, really important. We added like 100% pork shoulder, and we added like pork loin and pork shoulder on our label on the front and the back. And we're even optimizing it again now of like more ways to use it, or like sister owned, traceable from family farms. So like we're always trying to iterate that. So I guess tips would be just get it out there and start. It's never going to be perfect, but then you can always finesse and focus in on those main attributes. I think like in the meat category, especially when we were looking at doing a competitive analysis at everything, and I'm sure you'll start to see this and it will haunt you like it haunts me. And I'm sorry about that. But like when you look at a lot of meat labels, it's just like stamp, sign, overload, like so many things, like every single claim that you could ever imagine, all these things. And so we also really just tried to like take a different approach of like what is this full of? Not all these anti no things, and just make it simple. This is what it is. It's this much protein. These are the top 3 flavors, which are also the only ingredients. Like hopefully that is enough.
No, it's helpful. I feel like exactly what you're talking about. I feel like one of the hardest things about like building a brand, designing a brand is like uh key is like what is the
Yeah.
most important information that you want to convey. To your point, you can't just show up and throw up and just kind of throw every claim out there in the world, because then it's just they're all going to get buried and nothing is going to be important. And I feel
Uh-huh.
like that's one of the hardest things is really like honing in from a hierarchy standpoint. What are the most important things you want to share? What do we want to focus on most?
Yeah, and the hierarchy is so key. Like I think the very first time going back to coming from tech and us just doing this, we designed our labels on a desktop, and it was like so text heavy. We were not thinking about shelf at all. And then when we actually saw our product on shelf, because we didn't really have we thought we would start with food service and direct to consumer and then go retail. But once we started getting on shelf, like retail just started spinning, and because we were local, people knew us, they started taking. And then we're like, wow, we actually need to really focus on hierarchy and like pull out these top attributes because that's what matters.
Totally, totally.
Yeah.
On the topic of food service, what have you found are the pros and cons of the food service channel compared to traditional retail, and why did you guys kind of decide to really focus here for quite a while?
Yeah. We love the food service channel and the pros, especially if I think you are a brand like we are trying to be that's really rooted in culinary, chef crafted, ideally for consumers that are aspiring chefs or really care about quality and love to cook and enjoy. It gives just natural brand contextualization at no extra cost, you know? Like when I mentioned earlier when we started, we were in a few local independent retailers in Denver, Colorado, and we did one farmers market that summer of 2024. And we heard countless times, oh, we found you at Get Right's Bakery, or like we saw you on Outside Pizza Menu. We love that place. Now we've been able to pick it up at the store. So it's amazing in that regard. I think the cons are it's tough to manage and scale because, as I mentioned earlier, chefs are incredibly busy. They're getting hit up with reps, food service reps all the time. They need to focus on their margin compressed. You know, it's so much easier to order from this catalog than it is to work with this small brand, you know, at a premium. So it's just there's that inevitable friction. And so I think it's really hard to get in and scale.
Yeah,
But if you can, and if your product works, we love it. It's just so fun. And you don't have to do all the retail stuff, which you don't love. You don't love that for anyone listening. We obviously love our retail partners.
I know what you're talking about. I've
Yeah.
definitely heard that from multiple people that food service can kind of be a kind of like a brand building flywheel. Exactly what you
Yeah,
said
it's
is you'll find
awesome.
it in restaurants, and then they'll see it on the retail and they'll really recognize it, or the other way around too. So it feels like they can be pretty complementary.
Yeah. Yeah.
How can brands get tripped up in the food service channel? Like, what kind of stumbling blocks have you guys come across along the way?
Yeah. One mistake I made is when we launched, we didn't price like effectively for volume in food service. I was like kind of thinking about pricing everything the same per pound across retail and food service. And we have since changed our pricing and optimized, and we've seen a lot of growth from that. But I don't know, I just had no idea. You're thinking about like your gross margin and COGS and like what makes the most sense. And it's hard to know how much you actually scale with volume and what is palatable the food service channel, because in that channel, it's not like retail in that it goes on shelf, you work with a distributor, this is it, this is like your promo plan, blah, blah, blah. We have customers that are delis and bakeries and pizzerias and huge breweries, and they all have different volumes and different needs and schedules and work with different distributors. So it's really tough, I think, to figure out like the pricing in the delivery channel. So
Yeah.
that could definitely be one thing. But brands could focus on, depending on your brand, like, oh, I'm only going to start with these coffee shops, or I'm only going to start with gyms, and like be a little bit more focused than we were. And I think like just making sure that they have like the right packaging and sizing. Like for us, you need to go in with like, what is your value add? As I mentioned, you have everything working against you because GMs, decision makers are busy. Do you have this in the right size? Is it saving time? Is this elevating your menu and your offering? I think our food system, especially with restaurants, like what are customers' willingness to pay when they're going in here? And why is it worth not using like a Cisco commodity or what everybody else is using? You just have to like really prove out that value. So again, I think the sale is harder than retail.
That makes sense. On the topic of retail, it seemed like once you started putting a focus on retail, and you mentioned you're in NorCal. I think you're in the Midwest and Chicago, SoCal. Tell me just a bit about that journey of getting those first few buyer meetings, getting those commitments, and kind of leading up to those first launches.
Yeah, we started, like I said, in Denver, Colorado, and it was kind of the classic story of dropping off samples, figuring out what a sell sheet is, trying to get into those first few doors and be focused. I remember our first store, and one of our best stores still, is called Lever's Local Board. Did you ever go there when you lived in Denver? It's kind of like you mentioned, it's kind of like a Marzix that you described earlier. But
it's a little bigger though, right? And it's like
yeah, it's
you're the
the
highlight,
best.
dish, right?
Yeah, like
Yeah,
I would move in there if they would let me and like live there. Maybe that's where I'll live. But it's really nice. But I think we're like trying to demo there like every week when we first started, but we got like really nice velocity numbers. We learned so much. Like it was just like our place in our home. They also had $2 beer happy hour on Thursday. So we always demo during that time. But it really, it's that story of try to be disciplined and focused and get some of these initial really, really strong accounts so that you can have this data story. And we spent most of 2024. So we launched, like I said, in March of 2024, doing hyperlocal retail, convincing our first distributor. I think that was in May or June of 2024. So it was pretty quick, and we were scared to do it. We were going direct at first, but we tried to model out, do the math to do it, because it would open us from 12 doors to now we were in like 50 or 60 throughout Colorado, including this distributor did both food service and retail. So that come 2025, we felt good enough we like knew enough about distribution, like what it was like to work with one mini regional distributor, and enough about retail jargon to go to our next region. Because also, as we were discussing or mentioned briefly earlier, there's not a ton of independent retail chains in Colorado. We always want to stick kind of premium independent regional, just because of like the nature of our product and our supply chain. In 2024, it was not, we were still on that co-packer hunt. We were still like doing runs. Like we just weren't ready to go into like a 200 door store, let's say. But we did want to we know we needed to keep growing. And so we chose NorCal as our second region because Chelsea went to culinary school in NorCal. That customer really aligned with who we were targeting, like a modern eater who really cares about the story, the quality, chefs. And there's a lot of really nice accounts out there. And so we had, I think, we did our first trade show also in our first year of business, and we met the buyer of Berkeley Bowl there, and they were willing to go direct with us to their 2 stores. That account really, really took off. And what I did that was kind of crazy in hindsight, but it worked, is I was flying out there a few times to just drop off samples, get a few other accounts like interested or giving us a verbal, and then harassing a distributor and forcing them and asking them to work with us, which now they do. We work with the regional distributor,
Nice.
actually two in NorCal. But I was also telling this emerging brand this the other day. It's like, it's kind of chicken and the egg, and you just have to have the grit and bring the value again to that distributor. So then we're like, hey, look, we have these 20 accounts. Can we start shipping pellets to you? And now that is like one of our best regions. We're in like maybe 130 doors there.
That's great.
So then, yeah, kind of rinse and repeat for SoCal in our like St. Louis Midwest region, but we're trying to like continue in that model.
Makes sense. Anything that jumps out in terms of tools and tactics that you've found that have had the biggest impact from a velocity standpoint? Those could be,
Yeah.
like, demos or like well structured promos or like, shelf talkers, that kind of stuff. Yeah. Anything that kind of really,
Yeah. And I'd be so curious what you hear because I feel like we're still testing and learning. We haven't even, that all happened. I think we started launching with that distributor in like March, April of 2025. So almost a year, but like picking up those accounts along the way. So what we found that really, really works for us is demos. I know that's so polarizing for a lot of brands, but also our product is a higher price point and it tastes so different than most sausage. So driving that trial is really important. And most of the time when people try it, they convert, knock on wood.
totally.
It's a really effective tool for us. Whereas I've talked to a lot of brands, they're like, oh, I hate demos. I would never do demos. It's not worth it, blah, blah, blah. So of course, everything is different, but that's been effective for us. We are still very much trying to learn like the best promo strategy because we often get a lot of advice like you need to do this or you need to do these coupons or you need to put something on meat on your products. But I think meat is also, again, its own thing where like personally as a consumer, if I see a protein on clearance, I'm like, oh, what does that mean? Does it mean it's not good? Should I take
I
it?
usually think that it's getting close to expiration date.
Yeah, totally. And so that's something we're still trying to learn of like, okay, what kind of sales do we do? And
Yeah.
should we test like buy one, get one versus this amount off or like still trying to measure and figure that out. We also like there's limitations in what you can do for like shelf talkers and actual like marketing in the meat department. We do have some like shelf strips and we tried to send out and like we've tried some coupons, but not a lot of there's not as much opportunity, I think, in that regard.
I think that's a great point. I mean,
Yeah.
I definitely feel like demos are, you said they're kind of polarizing and they're obviously they're hard to scale. They're not cheap, especially as you grow and can't continue to just do them yourself. But I don't know. I feel like they're some of the most
Yeah.
impact you can do, especially for your type of category where the product is so good. And once someone tries it once, that's like something that they're going to remember. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like those are the most impactful things.
Yeah. I know. It's something we really need to dive
Especially
in
in
and
like the,
learn.
sorry to interrupt, but I feel like especially the more smaller local stores like the Marziks as an example, I feel like the people that are shopping at those stores, the odds that they're going to ask an employee at the store, what do you recommend? I feel like is much higher than at a big Safeway. So I
Yes.
feel like the smaller ones is even
Yeah.
more impactful.
Yeah. And that's actually such a good point and something that we try to do really authentically and genuinely is Chelsea and I, most of these stores like we have been to ourselves. And again, it's not scalable, but we have such a unique product and story and we just really care about the end user experience. So that's another thing I hear from a lot of founders like, why are you still doing demos and why are you going to all these places? But it's so important for us to build that relationship with the guys behind the meat counter because they are in the stores, people are coming up to them saying, hey, I need a pound of ground pork, or I want to make this. Like, what is this? Like, more than any other place in the store, they're interfacing with customers. And so, a promotional tactic we do that, again, I think is in trueness, like authentic, is we tried to give them, we sent like a lot of calendars, like Lottie's calendars. Don't worry, they were wholesome. They had recipes on them. But just like to remind them of us, and we send them coupons, we send them like beanies with like Lottie's hot dogs.
Yeah.
And every time we're there, we try to give them products and just learn from them because we truly have no idea what we're doing. We're like, how should we be updating our cases with Slack out and date coding instructions? Or what are customers asking you? And it matters. I think it just goes so much farther, maybe, and it's a benefit, I think, honestly, for us than center store or different buyer because it's not as transactional purchase as most CPG brands.
Yeah. Last question for you. It might be so heads down, you don't pay attention to much, but in case you do, any particular brands that piqued your interest lately, or kind of trends you're generally following in the space that have got you excited these days? Could be in or outside of the meat space.
Yeah, I think in CPG, I really have loved this return to all natural, clean label, like nourishing what your body needs. And I think there's so many great brands that are doing that now. It's just like simpler
Yeah.
foods. Like we love One Trick Pony. They're like crushing it this year. They're like a 2 ingredient peanut butter. Or we often are always compared or asked, like, do we know the Painterland sisters? Because they have like
Hmm.
a beautiful really clean label yogurt that we're obsessed with. We love Huxley. It's like a natural energy drink. Oh, they're based out of
Yeah.
Minnesota. Like you
Yeah.
see, you
Yeah.
have to check them out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think like there's so many cool new brands. Huxley's also like chef driven, and CN Chili's. They both Simon, the founder of Huxley, and Maria, the founder of CN Chili's, which is a really nice hot sauce brand. I had some this morning. They're both graduates of Culinary Institute of America. So anytime there's like a chef behind a CPG brand, you just
You guys are all
know
about
it's
it.
good. So yeah, I think just like clean, simple, perfected recipes has been something we're so excited about. And even as a consumer, I'm like, will always put my dollars there.
Totally. I respect that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, Cassie, this has been awesome. What's the best place for people to follow along with you and Chelsea these days? And then what's the best place for people to follow along with the brand as well?
Yeah. The best place to follow all of us is probably on our Instagram at Lottie's Meats. We try to do a lot of embarrassing founder content that always seems to do better than when we're like, hey, here's our product, or if we're like, hey, here's
Yeah,
some
it sounds
mistakes. Everyone's like. They like when we fall. Yeah, Lottie's Meats is our Instagram, or subscribe to our newsletter. We also try to send out
oh,
monthly,
cool.
like, this is everything we've learned and done, like a lot of behind the scenes monthly happenings called New News. So you can subscribe on our website. It's lottiesmeats.com.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Cassie. It's been great. I think that's the pod.